Welcome to the Green Wasp Removal YouTube channel. In this episode, we share a video presentation that was originally produced and screened by Green Wasp Removal and the Manchester University Wasp Survey Team on March 29th, 2025 for a local Brownie Troop, which is a young Girl Scout group aged 8 to 9 years typically, and this was part of their Bugs Badge learning event. The Brownies visited the Koinonia Environmental Center in Pierceton, Indiana. They did a great job learning about wasps and nest building, metamorphosis, pollination, biological pest control, and the differences between wasps and honeybees. We invite any other Brownie or Girl Scout troops to utilize all or any part of this presentation whenever they need it for their own Bugs Badge event. We had a great time working with the Brownies and the Girl Scout troop leaders. They were fantastic students and fantastic learners. They were really good in the field, and they just learned it so well. They took in the information we gave them, and they were able to repeat back what they learned. They're just super sharp and super fun, and we all had a really good time. We hope your Bugs Badge event will be equally successful, and we invite any Brownie troop anywhere to utilize any part of this presentation if it can be useful for you. You can stop and start the video in various presentation formats, and you can discuss what you learned during each section and do an activity related to that section and then carry on with the video. We had our Brownies do crafting like making pipe cleaner bees and drawing posters of wasps and labeling the scientific names of the parts of the wasp. We had them go out in the field and do a bug hunt on the trail. We showed them some live wasp specimens we have in captivity, as well as some dried wasps and dried nests. We used an interactive model of a nest mounted to a board to allow them to role play as the queen wasp starting a colony. There's many ways to utilize this video presentation in tandem with various activities. So just have fun with it, use your imagination, enjoy. What are wasps, and why are they important? Well, for starters, wasps are part of a huge group of insects that includes wasps, bees, ants, and sawflies. The scientific name for that group of insects is called Hymenoptera. All these insects in the Hymenoptera grouping share some common traits, such as they have an ovipositor, which is a tube that helps them lay eggs. Sometimes that ovipositor turns into a stinger that also delivers venom. They use venom when they sting for defense or when they're hunting. And they all go through full metamorphosis, which just means they grow in stages from egg to larva to pupa to adult. Now that you know what wasps are, you might wonder, why are they so important? Well, we're going to show you two very important reasons that wasps exist in the world. Number one, wasps are beneficial insects that help pollinate plants. There are thousands of species of wasps in North America where we live, and most of them are native pollinators, which means they belong in North America because this is where they're from. They evolved here alongside all of our native plants that also belong here. So they're very good at pollinating our native plants. If you look at this footage, you can see the wasps drinking nectar from the plants. And when they do that, they pick up pollen powder and they spread that all around other plants. And that's how plants pollinate. Our wasp friends pollinate plants just like our native bees. So we want you to learn how to love wasps just like we love our bees. The second reason the world really needs wasps is because they're very important when it comes to biological pest control. They eat other bugs. And without wasps doing this job of eating other bugs, all the other bugs would overpopulate and we'd have way too many bugs. So as you see here, this mommy wasp is chewing up a caterpillar. And she's going to feed that caterpillar to her baby wasps because they need a lot of protein to grow. This is just like when a bird picks a worm up off the ground, takes it back to the bird's nest and feeds it to her baby birds. Wasps do the same thing, and it's very important work. The wasps we're going to talk about today are the ones that make colonies. These are social wasps is what they're called. Eusocial wasps is another word for it. That means they build a house out of wood fiber and they all live in it together. And that house is called a nest. And inside the nest are little cells or little cups. And each cup holds an egg. And after that egg hatches and develops, an adult wasp is born on the nest. And then they come out and they pollinate plants for us and they hunt bugs for us. And they work together as a group, which is why they call them social wasps. And we're going to show you today how wasps go through metamorphosis, which means they look different when they're young than they do when they're an adult. They take different forms. You see an egg, a larva, a pupa, then an adult. You will get a chance to demonstrate what it's like to be a queen wasp who lays an egg, who raises her larva and her babies right up to the adult stage on the nest. You're going to learn all about how the wasps capture insects and chew them up, like you see the mother wasp here chewing up a fly, and she's about to feed it to her babies. Mother wasps, sometimes called queens or foundresses, they have to work super hard. They have to build their nest, lay the eggs, raise their babies, protect their nest from predators like other bugs and birds and animals that might want to eat up the nest and all their babies. So it's a lot of work to be a queen wasp, and you'll learn more about that. So let's focus now on the wasp life cycle. We'll learn about how queen wasps build their house or their nest. Then we'll learn about the life stages that happen in that nest, from egg to larva to pupa to adult. Let's begin by showing you how a queen wasp collects wood to build her house. It's a pretty amazing process. In the springtime, just like right now, you're going to see wasps out in the environment chewing on wood, like fence posts and old logs and decks and things like that, where they can collect wood fiber. So you see she's not eating the wood, she's just collecting it, and she's going to use it to build her house, just like we cut down trees to make lumber to build our house. And she chews it up and mixes it with her saliva, and then she rolls it up into a little ball that she can carry back to where she wants to build her nest. So here she goes, she's flying back to where she's going to build. Here's another wasp doing the same thing. She's balling up a little bit of wood fiber, and she's going to fly it back to her nest, and that's where she's going to build it. Here's a bald-faced hornet collecting some wood, and she's doing the same thing. She's going to build her house out of wood, and it's a very interesting process to watch. They're really good builders. Here's a yellow jacket, called a German yellow jacket, who's also collecting wood off a fence post in a garden, and she's going to use that wood to build her house. So you see, all of these eusocial species of wasps, which means wasps that live in a colony, they're all going to build their house out of wood. Here's a European paper wasp, another type of wasp, and she's collecting wood so she can go build her house. So look around this spring and see if you find any wasps chewing up wood to build their houses. Now here you see a European paper wasp. She's building her first cell of her nest up underneath the eaves of a barn. She chews up the wood fiber, mixes it with her saliva, and it becomes a very soft, papier-mâché-like material that she can build her nest with. And she works and works. You see her going around and around to make the cell bigger and bigger. The cell is shaped like a little cup or a basket. And what she's going to do is lay an egg in that cell as soon as it's ready. And then she'll build another cell, and she'll lay an egg in there, and then another cell, and she'll lay another egg in there. And that's how the nest starts to grow and become a colony. The queen will lay all the eggs on the nest. The first round of eggs that are born become worker wasps, and they help her build the nest and go hunt for food, and they help raise the babies on the nest, and they are very good helpers. So all of these worker wasps that the queen can make will help her build the colony. Here you see one of our beneficial native wasps called a northern paper wasp. She has built her first cell in her nest, and she already put a new egg in it. Can you see the egg? It's right there in the little cup that she made, called a cell. And pretty soon she'll make a lot more cells and make a lot more eggs. Let's take a look at another wasp who's busy building her nest. Inside this birdhouse, a wasp found the perfect place to live. Can you see she's made 2 cells? one of them has an egg in it. See the egg? Now she's making a third cell, and she's going to put a couple more eggs in her nest. And that's how they begin to grow a colony. Here's another wasp who's already made a few cells on her nest, so she can start laying more eggs. You can see in the center she's already made the first egg in the first cell, and now she's adding more cells around that. And it's amazing how they can make every cell look almost identical. They don't have any rulers, they don't have any math skills, but somehow they know how to make perfect cells. Now we're going to show you something special that not many people have ever seen. We're going to show you what it looks like when a mama wasp, or a queen wasp, or a foundress as they call them, actually lays an egg. You see how she drops her abdomen, which is the lower part of her body, down into the cell, and she stays there for a few minutes. What she's doing is she's laying an egg, and she's attaching it to the side of the cell where the egg will sort of stick there with kind of glue that she's able to make, and the egg will stay there until it hatches into a baby larva. You can see a couple of young larvae in the cells below her. She also has stored in the cells around her some nectar from plants. Nectar from flowers is what she uses for energy when she needs to eat during this very busy process of laying eggs. It looks shiny in the light. You can see it there in the red circle. Once she's done laying her egg, she climbs back out of the cell, and that's what you're going to see here. In the cells around her, you see more droplets of nectar, which is a type of wasp honey, and that's what she'll be eating while she's laying her eggs. So she's checking on her egg to make sure it looks okay, and to make sure it's attached okay to the side of the cell where it will grow. Did you see it? There's the egg. And in the cell next door, there's an egg that hatched. It's a little tiny baby wasp called a larva. Now, during all this activity where she's laying eggs and raising her babies, she also has to protect her eggs from predators like other bugs. Here you see her, she just protected her nest from an intruding bug. We'll show that to you again in slow motion. Watch how she sees this bug coming up toward her nest, and she says, "No, you don't get to come here." And she goes, bop, and she gets it, and she throws it away from the nest to keep her nest safe. And she has to do this all day long, from ants or beetles or other bugs or flies that might want to try to get into her nest. So here's another nest that you can really see the nectar in and a couple of new eggs in. And she's built a few cells already, and most of them have eggs. Here's one egg. Let's count the eggs and see how many we can see. Here's number 2. Here's number 3. Here's number 4. And then you can just see number 5. And then over here you can see some nectar. And that's what the mama wasp will drink while she needs energy while she's laying all these eggs. This mama wasp had built her nest inside a plastic bin that had a bunch of toys in it. And so did this wasp. There were 2 wasps who had built nests in this nice dry plastic bin because it protected them from the weather and from predators. And if you look in here carefully, you can see her egg too. There it is. So in the springtime, you're going to see a lot of wasps collecting a lot of wood to build their nests and start their colonies. Let's go back to the birdhouse and see how she's doing. Look, she's in the middle of building more cells onto her house. You can see one of her eggs there, and you can also see her working and working here, going round and round the edge of a cell to make it taller, because she knows pretty soon her eggs will hatch and become larvae, which are the baby wasps in their first stage of growth during metamorphosis, and she needs to make her cells tall enough to fit those larvae. So you can see her working with that paper mache type material she makes out of the wood. It's the darker edge around the edge of the cell, because when it's wet it looks a little bit darker, and when it dries it's the same shade as the rest of the nest. But in the meantime, she uses it kind of like clay or paper mache to build those nest cells, and she does such a good job with it. You see how she works, and she carefully feels around with her antennae, which are very sensitive organs on the wasp. They help her understand exactly where she is on the nest, and they help her figure out what the measurements should be, and this is how she makes the nest cells all identical. Now she's finished up and she has to go get some more wood. So here she goes. Now she's going to collect more wood just like we saw before, and she's going to ball it up and bring it back to her nest. And she's going to do this over and over and over again while she gets that nest going. Eventually, when the first workers are born, they'll help her with all of this work. But for now, she's still on her own, has to do every job herself, lay the eggs, build the house, protect the eggs from predators, everything. Here she goes on another cell, using that wood fiber, going around the edge of each cell to build it up. Here we see a different wasp on a different nest, and she's doing the same thing, working and working around the edge of the cell. You see where the darker colored wet material is that she's molding with her mouth, the mandibles. These are the pincher parts on her mouth that she chews up food and prey with. Prey is another word for hunted insects that she brings back to the nest. She'll chew those up and she'll feed them to her larvae, just like she chews up wood pulp to build her nest here. The mandibles are very strong and they give her a great tool to work with. So she uses her mandibles, she uses her bodily fluids and saliva to make sure the material is soft. She uses her antenna to help her navigate, and she uses her legs. It's a very full body activity. Here's another wasp doing the same thing, and she's working and working around the edge of her nest to make a new cell. And remember, every time she makes a new cell, she lays a new egg in it right away. And this is how the colony is built. And pretty soon, each of these single mama wasps are going to have some workers born in the nest when their larva develops. And once their larva comes out as adult wasps, they will take over a lot of this work, and she can focus on just staying on the nest and laying eggs. But for now, she's still doing all the work by herself. Here's another queen wasp, and she's got some nectar in her nest, and she's got some eggs in there. Let's go through it. Here's some nectar. Here's some more nectar. And it looks like honey, and it's very sweet, just like honey. More nectar here. This cell has nectar and an egg in it. There's the egg. Here's another egg. She has been very busy. Here's another egg. If you look through the rest of the nest, you can see lots of nectar. Now let's take a look at a more developed nest. Later on, when the eggs start to hatch, the baby wasps come out. You can see these larvae here. These are baby wasps. After their eggs hatch, they start to grow and grow. The little pink ones off to the right are a little bit younger, and then the bigger, sort of cream-colored one is a little bit older. And this wasp has done a good job collecting nectar as well. She's got a bunch of nectar in there. Now she has to start feeding her hungry babies. Once the larvae are hatched out of their egg, they need protein to grow. So the mama wasp will go out and she will hunt insects, and you see her here chewing it up with her mandibles. That's called malaxation. And what that does is it makes the pieces of the insect meat small enough and soft enough that the larva can eat it and swallow it. So she's being very careful to feed each larva in the nest a little chunk of protein so that they can grow up and they can pupate. Now she's washing her hands and making sure she's clean to take another trip out and do some more hunting. And then when she comes back, she's got some more meat, probably caterpillar meat. And that's very high protein food that the baby wasps love to eat because they need that protein to grow up strong and healthy. Here she comes back with another load of protein for the larva that she hunted in the wild. She captured a bug and she chewed it up and she brought it back. And remember, if wasps were not doing this all around the world, then all the other insects on the planet would overpopulate and we would have way, way too many insects everywhere. We would be crawling with bugs everywhere. Wasps control all of that. That's why they are so important to our planet, so important to our environment and our ecosystems that we live in, because we need them to do exactly what you see here. They're collecting food and they're bringing it back and they're feeding it to their babies. And all of that food is made up of other insects that would overpopulate without wasps. Another reason this behavior is super important to the world is that if we didn't have wasps controlling all of these other pest insects for us, then we would have to use more insecticide, which is poison. All insecticide or bug poisons are toxic. So we need wasps to do natural biological pest control, is what it's called. Biological pest control simply means you have one species of insect controlling the population of another. As you see here, the wasp babies, the larvae, they're growing very fast, and they are getting very hungry. And they need even more food now. So we're going to show you what it looks like when the queen wasp feeds her babies. She goes out, she collects this meat, and the nectar in the nest is not for the babies. The nectar is for the adult wasp to drink for energy while she needs it, while she's doing all this work. But the protein that she gets, the insect meat, you see her here giving a little bit of meat to each one of the larvae, and then they have to try to chew it up and swallow it. So she's very careful to chew it up in such a way that it's going to be able to be eaten by each individual larva. Now, some of the larvae are tiny, tiny little larvae, so they get a more liquefied meal that's a little bit easier to swallow when you're tiny. And then the older larvae on the nest get a bigger chunk of meat that's a little bit better for their age group. So she has to be very careful to give each baby larva the right type of food that they can handle at that developmental stage. So she's very good at feeding all of her babies in different ways with the insect meat by chewing it up in different ways for each one. And she dips her head down into the cell like this, and she feeds them mouth to mouth, just like birds do. And the larvae in the nest, they wiggle around and they move and they get excited that there's food coming. And you can see this one in the red circle has a big chunk of food that she just dropped off mouth to mouth. And now it can chew that up and swallow it. And the larvae are basically all mouth at this age. They can take huge chunks of meat and chew it up and swallow it themselves as long as the mother wasp or the queen wasp drops it off. So she will drop it off. They will work on trying to eat it like you see here. And they can take huge amounts of food because they are growing really quickly. Most wasps go from the egg stage all the way through pupation and metamorphosis to the adult stage in only about a month, maybe 5 or 6 weeks. It's pretty fast. So they're growing really quickly and they need lots of food. So the mother wasp just keeps working and working, as you see here. In some of the video footage we show you today, you'll notice that the wasp larvae, the baby wasps, wiggle around quite a bit in their cell. They do this on purpose. They're like baby birds because the more noise they make and the more they wiggle and wiggle, then the more food they will get. You see this larva just had a chunk of food dropped off, and it's kind of just off to the side of her mouth, so the mother is going to try to get in there and help her get that lined up so she can eat it. And all of the babies on the nest for this first generation of wasp babies, they're all going to be female workers. And that way they can help the mother wasp go out and hunt for food and help her build the nest. So the faster that the mother wasp can feed these babies, the faster they will grow up and be able to help her. So you see she gives them big chunks of food. Now here's the nest a little bit later when the larva starts to grow up a little bigger. You see how their heads are turning darker and they're starting to look a little bit more like wasps. Well, this larva pretty soon will go into pupation. There's also some tiny larvae in there, and there's some that's kind of in the middle in between. And the growth stages are really interesting to look at. So here we have a baby larva who's still very tiny. Here we have a very mature larva who's about to go into pupation. Here we have kind of one that's in between stages, the young and the older. And there's some nectar in there you see in one of the cells. The golden liquid there is kind of like a honey type nectar that the adult wasp will eat. When the mature larvae go into pupation, like you see in the red circle here, they weave a silk cap over their cell and they make a little cocoon for themselves. And you see her moving around underneath. This larva, she's moving because she's weaving and weaving and weaving little threads of silk, which come from a gland in her mouth. So she can create her own roof on her cell made out of silk threads. Really very interesting process. And all of that silk thread is mostly made out of proteins that her mother's been feeding her from the pest insects that she collects and brings back to the nest. And she'll stay in that cell for a couple of weeks with the silk cap on it. And when she's done, she'll come out of that cell as an adult wasp. And that whole developmental stage, from the time she starts weaving her silk cap to the time she comes out as an adult, that's called pupation. Now we're going to look inside the nest again, and we're going to watch her weaving her silk cap a little more. You see her in there moving around? She's weaving thread after thread to make a good, strong roof. At the same time, there's younger generations of eggs being hatched, and there's also nectar in the nest all the time, so that the adult wasp can drink that for energy while she goes through all this work. So in here you can see lots of larvae, and most of them are now getting pretty old. There's still some young ones that were just born and just hatched out of their eggs, but a lot of these are about to go into pupation. So pretty soon these larvae will pupate and turn into adult wasps, and then the queen wasp will finally have some workers to help her. Now here a little bit later you can see several of the larvae have become mature enough to weave their silk caps, so they're all in pupation. And here the mother is feeding some more food to the younger larvae to get them ready to pupate. You see a big chunk of food here that she just dropped off for this larva. And that larva just chews it right up and eats it because it needs that protein to weave their silk caps. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 larvae have gone into pupation on this nest. So the mother wasp will soon have 4 workers. And now she's cleaning up, because wasps are actually a very clean insect. They groom all the time. This behavior is called grooming, and that's how they keep themselves very clean while they're doing all their feedings. Now we're going to take you to another nest to show you what it looks like when a lot of the workers have been born. And there's a bigger population on the nest, and it's becoming a colony. Here at the tennis courts, underneath this bench, we find a very busy wasp nest with lots of workers born on it. You can see a lot of the larvae have gone into pupation and put silk caps over their cells. Now, you can see larvae over to the left side of the screen that have not woven their silk caps yet, but a lot of them have. So this colony is in the very strong growth stage where they're having lots and lots of wasps being born. I don't know about you, but I would not want to sit on this bench. Here's another one that has a lot of adult wasps born on it, and a lot of silk caps have been woven, so they're going into pupation, lots of other ones. So every one of these white silk caps, pretty soon a wasp is going to chew its way out as an adult wasp, and they're going to have a very good sized colony here. So lots of these workers have helped the original queen build all of these cells and maintain all of the larvae and help feed the larvae. So the queen didn't do all of this by herself. She laid all of the eggs, but she didn't have to do all of the building, and she didn't have to feed all the larvae by herself. The workers helped her with that. And that's the reason she fed the larvae so quickly, was so that they could grow up and become workers to help her. Now let's go back to the birdhouse, and let's see what they're up to in here. Look, they have some workers born. So now this wasp queen, she has some help on the nest too, to help her build the nest and help her feed the larvae. It's getting harder to tell now which one is the queen and which ones are the workers, because they all look alike at this stage, at least for this species. So you see this wasp has a chunk of food in her mouth, and she's looking around for some larvae to feed. So this colony is doing well. They have some workers born. You can see there's some silk caps still on the nest, and I bet they have some larvae that are growing up in the nest too, and that's who they're feeding. It's fun to watch a wasp nest grow into a colony. Here we're going to show you a different species of wasp called a bald-faced hornet. They're being collected by the Manchester University Wasp Survey Team. The team collects wasps for venom immunotherapy, which is where they collect the wasps and they send them to a medical lab, and the lab creates a venom product from the wasp stinger venom. And that venom product is used to give people allergy shots who are allergic to wasp venom. And if you're allergic to wasp venom, the venom can hurt you. So these shots allow you to become immune from wasp venom, and then you don't have the allergy anymore. Here you see the queen wasp, or one of the workers, collecting wood and rolling it up into a little ball and flying it back to the nest. And this species of wasp is interesting because they cover up all of their nest cells with layers and layers of paper. That's what they're doing. You see them building that paper on the edge of the nest so that the comb structure is protected. It's a really neat wasp house. So if you were to remove all that paper on the outside, you would see all the cells inside that the baby wasps live in. You'll have eggs in there, and you'll have larvae in there, and you'll have pupating wasps in there underneath their silk caps. Here the team is removing the paper so they can expose all of the cells, and you see all the white caps in there. That means there's a lot of pupating larvae that's about to come out as adult wasps. And we'll give you some closer looks at this. So here's some very active baby wasps. They're called larvae. They're so wiggly sometimes because they're trying to make sure they gain attention. They want to be fed, and the more they wiggle, the more they'll get fed. Here in the circle, you see some eggs. Here's some immature larvae, and here's some more mature larvae that's about to weave their silk caps. And here's the most mature larva that has gone into pupation underneath their silk caps. So there's a lot of action on this nest, and it's fun to see all of the different developmental stages. It's a very busy colony. Here the team has removed the comb from this nest with all the cells in it so we can get a closer look at what's in there. And if you look very closely, you can see some tiny larvae and some very big mature larvae and lots of pupating wasps underneath their silk caps. It's always so interesting to look inside each cell and see what you can find. If you look really closely, you can see that these larvae, or these baby wasps, have tiny little mandibles, just like their mama wasp, and they're starting to develop eyes and heads, and you're starting to see the shape of a wasp head developing on top of their bodies. Meanwhile, there's still eggs down in these cells, and some tiny, tiny baby larvae down there that haven't grown up very big and are not quite ready to weave their silk caps yet. And so this nest is very busy with lots of life in it. And the eggs are still attached to the side of the cell in some of these cells. And it's a good view of what that looks like. Now, here's a special thing that not a lot of people have seen. When the wasps are done pupating and they've become adult wasps, they start to chew out the silk cap that covers their cell. They chew it away. It's kind of like a baby chick who's pecking their way out of their egg in the world of chickens. And it's the same idea. They gain a lot of strength from this process. And when they're ready, they pull themselves out of the cell, just like a baby chick pulls their way out of the egg. And here they are. They're a fully grown adult wasp that's all the way through pupation. And now they are free to fly and stretch their wings and go out and help support the nest. It's a pretty amazing process, from the egg to the larva to the pupa to the adult wasp. This is how every species of eusocial wasp is born. And we get to share it with you, and that's a lot of fun. This is the full life cycle of the wasp, from egg to baby wasp called larva, to pupating wasp, to adult wasp. That's the full metamorphosis journey. Here you see another wasp nest with another wasp chewing away its silk cap, about to be born on the nest. She works and works and works to remove that silk cap, and when she's all done, she's ready to pop out her antenna, and the antenna are organs that are very sensitive for a wasp. They give her a lot of information about the outside environment. And so you see her sticking her antennas out because it helps her understand the world and where she is. And then she starts to stick her legs out, and she continues chewing away that silk cap. And then she's ready to start pulling herself out. Here she comes. And in the cells all around her, you can see that there's already been some more eggs laid. There's some tiny little larvae or baby wasps attached to the side of the cell, and there's other pupating wasps. And you'll notice that she's doing a lot of cleaning behavior, or grooming, as they call it. That helps her get all the nest debris off of her antennas and her legs and her body while she's pulling herself out. And when she's all done and she's ready to go, she pulls herself completely out of the cell, and the first worker on this nest is born. And the queen wasp is very happy about this because now she's going to have some help. And this new worker wasp who's being born is going to help her build the nest cells and help her feed the other larvae, help her hunt for food. It's nice to have some help. It's also nice to have some company on the nest so you're not alone anymore as the queen wasp. And she's got extra helpers to help her protect the nest. They can defend the nest against any predators that try to attack the nest, and that's a good thing too. Now that you know about the life cycle of a wasp and how they are born from egg to larva to pupa to adult, let's take a look at the difference between wasps and bees. Because a lot of people don't understand that wasps are not bees. They're a completely different insect with a completely different way of living. And so now all of you will learn how to tell the difference between bees and wasps. First of all, wasps and bees look different. Can you see the difference between the honeybees that are drinking some of this honey that we put out for them and the wasp, who is also drinking the honey? You see the different yellow jackets. They're very yellow, and they look bright yellow compared to sort of the honey-colored bees. These are honeybees, and they're all sharing the same honey, but only the honeybees actually made this honey. It's honey from honeybees, but the wasps like to drink it too. But side by side, it's much easier to tell the difference. You see how the honeybees are a little fuzzier, and they're more the color of honey. And they drink with a long tubular tongue that is a little bit different looking than the wasp mouth parts. And the wasp is very bright yellow by comparison. This is a yellow jacket, so she's sort of black and yellow. So if you look at them closely side by side, you can see that one is a honeybee and one is a wasp. They're sort of the same size. They have similar body parts, antennae and wings and bodies, but really their coloring is totally different. Sometimes people mistake yellow jackets for honeybees, and they just call them bees. Many people never really use the name wasp for anything. They call everything that flies and everything that has a stinger bees. And that's kind of silly because they're different. And what we want you to do is start calling them wasps because you know the difference. And from now on, you can tell the people that mistakenly call wasps bees, you can tell them the truth. A wasp is a wasp, and they live differently than bees. A second main difference, besides the way they look, is that honeybees are vegetarians, meaning all they eat is pollen from plants and nectar from flowers. That's it. They get nectar for sugar and carbohydrates, and they get pollen for their protein. Whereas with wasps, they do eat nectar from flowers just like bees, but they're also meat eaters, and they have to have meat from insects that they hunt in the wild to feed to their larvae. The larvae, or baby wasps, depend on the mothers and the worker wasps to go and get that insect meat for them. Whereas baby bees only eat the plant material that their worker bees collect, and they never have to have insect meat. So bees are vegetarians. Wasps are predators that hunt for meat. But both the bees and the wasps love plant nectar and sweet carbohydrate fluids like honey. That's why they're both good pollinators. So the main differences we talked about today between bees and wasps are that bees are vegetarians, wasps are meat eaters, as well as nectar drinkers, and they look different. You can tell really quickly which one of these is a honeybee and which one of these is a wasp. All you have to do is look closely and know what the differences are. And we sure hope that we have helped you to understand the difference today between bees and wasps, and also learn about wasps and know why they're important and how they grow and how amazing they are at doing so many different things in nature for us, that they should be our friends. We should love bees and wasps and all the Hymenoptera insects, even ants and sawflies. They all have jobs to do in nature, and they all deserve our respect and our good care of them and all the animals on our earth. because we need them. So they should be our friends because we can protect them and they can help us by doing jobs that we need them to do. And as long as we're careful, we can live together side by side most of the time. Sometimes, if we accidentally step on a wasp or if we scare a nest and they come out to defend the nest, they'll sting us, and that hurts. And that can even be dangerous if you have a venom allergy. But the fact is, for most people, most of the time, wasps and bees are our friends. And we can get along just fine. As long as we understand each other, everybody's happy. This spring and summer and fall, when wasp season is active, you might even find wasps living in the ground, either in your yard or by the street corners and the tree lawns. Somewhere you might see a wasp nest like this. These are called eastern yellow jackets, and they're a very important beneficial wasp, and they do a lot of good work for us by collecting pest insects and pollinating plants. But they can sting, like you see here, and so you got to be careful. What you see in this footage is that Coco from our wasp survey team at Manchester University, she's using a special camera that can see underground to tell us where this nest is. And we're going to dig out the nest so we can bring the comb into our laboratory and we're going to study it. And so she has a partner here on the team named Milo, and they're doing a very good job digging this wasp nest out. But you should only do this if you have proper protection. Like we have full bee suits that we use. So as much as we love wasps, we know they can be dangerous and they can sting you. So really you don't want to go near them if you don't have to. You just want to give them the space they need to be comfortable and happy. And when you do have to remove them, call professionals like us and we can come in and help you. Coco's very good at the job and she likes doing it. And she can tell you more about what she does later. She and the rest of the team collect many, many wasps all throughout the wasp season, and we use them for medical purposes, like giving people allergy shots that can save their lives. So it's very good work that we're proud to do, and the team has a lot of fun doing it. Here you see Elise from the Manchester University Wasp Survey team collecting some yellow jacket wasps from a nest that had lived inside this wall. And you can see how some of these wasps are bringing back insect meat for their nest. And that's their most important job that they do for us. So next time you see a wasp out there somewhere in the world, thank them for all their hard work and for clearing up all the other pest insects that would overpopulate if they weren't out there hunting them. During wasp season, all around the world, they're out there all day, every day, hunting pest insect after pest insect, feeding them to their babies, making sure their larvae grow up into pupated wasps that can come out as adult wasps and continue the life cycle. Now that you know a little bit more about wasps, we hope you'll tell everybody you know that they're beneficial insects and you shouldn't kill them. And if you do have to get rid of them, don't use poison. Don't use poison insecticide that's toxic for every living thing. There's many other better techniques you can use, like vacuum extraction or simply spraying a nest with organic soap and water. That's all you need. Sometimes essential oil can be mixed in. Either way, you don't need toxic poisons to get rid of wasps. So for now, we say thank you, wasps. We love you, and we'll see you out there in the world as springtime comes. And thank you, brownies, for paying attention and being good learners. We hope you'll get your bug badges today as a result of this presentation and the rest of the activities we're going to do to go with it. So have fun, enjoy your bug badges, and treat all the wasps and bees and all the other insects you can with kindness and respect, and be good protectors of every living thing in our environment. And wherever you go from now on for the rest of your lives, you can help teach others about the importance of wasps. It's March 17th, 2025, St. Patrick's Day. We are at Koinonia Nature Preserve and Retreat in Indiana. Today we're looking at this tree. down at the base of this tree, which is just off the trail of one of the hiking trails here. The trail goes up these stairs and right around the ridge back to the main lodge. We have a Brownie Girl Scout group coming out here on March 29th. So I'm checking this tree because there is a very active honeybee nest in this tree. And they've been here for a while. They were seen last summer, last year, very active at the time. And we're going to check it again now and try to collect a sample of these bees for specimens so we can have them tested at a local bee lab, maybe Purdue or Ohio State, wherever we can get it done. But we're going to use just a little jar to capture some of the bees and send them to the lab. We want to know what type of bee they are genetically, so the property owners can decide how they want to handle that. So we're going to take a scope cam today, which is this. It's a fiber optic cable with a camera on it, and it has a screen. We're going to insert that up the tree, and we're going to try to figure out where that nest is. It could be anywhere up to 20 feet up the tree if it's hollow, and we'll see if we can find any bees or any honeycomb that will indicate where the nest is. There's tree sap that the bees use, and I see comb. There's honeycomb right there already. Don't see any live bees yet. They'll be higher up the tree. But immediately, as soon as you look in here, you can see activity has been here. You see bits of honey, bits of propolis, which is sap that they collect. And there is honeycomb right there. Let's go a little bit further up. Point this a little bit higher. Here we have a lot of comb visible. Let's go a little further up. There's our bees. Hi bees. How was your winter? So we have active bees here we can see now. They're all hunkered up in the tree, higher up in the comb. They'd be about up here. This is about where the bees are. So honeybees don't hibernate. They don't go to sleep in the winter. They just hide out in a very warm tree, and they generate their own heat by vibrating the muscles they use to flap their wings. And by doing that, they can keep their queen warm and all their bees warm until springtime. You may start seeing some come out and try to defend the nest. So right now I can see the bees on the camera, the borescope camera. They're moving fairly slowly because it's still pretty cold out. But they're definitely active and they're interested in the camera. They're coming to check out what the light source is. Well, I see them here attacking the camera. They're not fond of the light or the camera, so they do try to attack it. But when they come out, they tend to go back to the tree pretty quickly, so they don't seem like they're particularly aggressive. They attack the light because they know it could be a threat to their nest. So they're doing a good job defending their nest like they're supposed to. You see how they come out? They're not so happy about this camera. They attack the light, they attack the camera. They're doing what they should do. They're defending. You can't blame them for that. And they try to sting me, but I have my suit on, so they can't get to me. But if you didn't have a suit, this would be very dangerous, and you could get stung quite a bit. So you never want to approach a beehive like this in the wild, ever. Just in case they're dangerous species that could be very aggressive and defensive, and they could sting you a lot. So you don't want to do this unless you have protection. Okay? So I'm getting very good footage of the bees inside the nest. And we'll show that to you when we edit the video for you. Here they are. Not so happy with me right now, but that's okay. We'll leave them alone here in a minute. There's a lot more coming out now. Okay, now it's time to capture some more specimens so we can have them tested at a bee lab and we can find out what species they are by looking at their genetics. So here we capture some bees inside a jar by taking the borescope camera that they're clustered around and inserting that right into the jar and then quickly putting the cap on the jar. And that traps them inside the jar. Okay, so we've got enough of a sampling here that we can take these and analyze them in a lab. Now there's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, at least 10 or 12 of them in there. And that'll be enough to check them for viruses and bacterias and species and maybe some mite content, how many parasitic mites they might have. So that's great. So it seems like the bees that live in this tree are not super aggressive. They are probably not Africanized bees that would continue to attack me. What they did instead is come and attack me while I was bothering them with the camera, but then they went right back to their house. That's probably a non-aggressive species, maybe a European honeybee, the normal bees we see in most hives around the United States. So chances are these ladies are European honeybees. Overall, it looks like these bees are probably pretty safe, but you got to be careful anyway. So for the benefit of the property owner and for anybody else who might use these walking trails, we're going to put up a little caution tape around this tree just to mark it so people understand that the nest is here. And we'll leave it up to the property owners if they want to put signage out. So we're going to show you how we wrap up the tree with caution tape in high speed, fast forward. And while we do that, we'll explain to you brownies that all brownies and Girl Scouts, and really everyone, should only approach bees if you have a full bee suit on and you're with a professional and a grown-up who can help you with that. Otherwise, always appreciate bees and wasps from a distance, give them the respect they deserve, and they won't bother you. So what we've done here is considered basic due diligence. We're just marking it with caution so that anybody hiking these trails understands that there's something about this area that they need to be aware of. And maybe we can have the property owners put up a sign regarding a bee colony here that they're either going to try to protect or they're going to try to remove, whatever they want to do. But either way, they have the option now to understand that this is an area where they should be cautious and to be aware of this hive. March 29th, 2025. Our brownies are here. They're being very good and quiet. Are we seeing bees? Good job.